So why don't we go ahead and just kick things off here? I'll keep on adding people as they go, but Tegan, why don't you go ahead first and introduce yourself? Maybe just tell us like what you teach here on Outschool, I suppose,
Yeah,
how long you've been on the platform, all that good stuff.
absolutely. Hey, everybody. Welcome to those of you that are coming in. We're excited to do this for y'all today. Before I get started with my who I am posting in the chat for you a link to a Google form, and we're going to be monitoring that throughout our time today to go over any questions and answers that you guys have so that we can make sure that we're adhering to that. But I am Tegan. I do teach on Outschool, and I have for 3 years almost. It'll be 3 years in just a few weeks. Predominantly elementary subjects, although as my children have gotten a little bit older, I do more middle school and high school stuff now, just because as my children have grown and I homeschool them, I also have kind of grown with them. In addition to my Outschool, I am a brick and mortar teacher. So like some of you guys who are coming in right now during this COVID epidemic, who are transitioning to online teaching, I also do brick and mortar. So hopefully if you have any questions about that transition, I am more than happy to go that way for you and give you guys a helping hand.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, I guess I'll go ahead and introduce myself next. So my name is Caitlin Kaiser. I'm one of the newer veteran teachers, or at least the newest one in our group tonight. So I came to Outschool in July 2019. Let's see, what do I do? I'm a music teacher on Outschool, although I'm starting to dabble in some dark history classes as well. Those are for teens. I teach all the way across the gamut age-wise. So my youngest kids are usually between 4 and 5. And then I have all the way up through teenagers up to 17 and 18. I mostly teach music history, music listening skills, that type of stuff. I don't do a lot of like private music instruction. That's just not really my jam, at least here on Outschool. And I think one of the reasons that I was so drawn to Outschool when I was definitely the ability to do those kind of group music classes that I feel like a lot of students don't get the opportunity to have in public school, and then also in a homeschool environment where they might not, have access to music education. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do. Let's let Whittier go.
Hello, my name is Whittier Strong, and yes, you can hear my lovebird buddy very loudly in the background. He does show up in one of my classes about birds. I mostly teach preschool and early elementary, social studies and zoology, paleontology. That preschool social studies is really, and storytelling those things are really kind of my bag. Also do some elementary level art appreciation and a few random things here and there, but preschool has kind of pretty much become my specialty.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, so we've got a few kind of built out sections here, but if you have any questions, do make sure to check out that Google form that was posted into the chat box. We're going to pull questions from there. The chat is so great sometimes, but it gets really stressful for us to try to like watch questions come in. So we decided to do it that way instead. What we're basically going to do, I think, is just kind of go through some of these sections, just kind of chat with each other and see what comes up organically. So the first question that we kind of wanted to dive into here was what we did before Outschool. I think all of us have noticed a big influx, especially of teachers coming from public schools, and then some VIP kid teachers, those online ESL teachers, and that I think spans a lot of our background. So does anybody want to kick it off here with what you did before you came on to Outschool?
I think I can go first.
Sure.
It's probably easiest for me to put it in reverse chronological order. I think like a lot of Outschool teachers, I was doing the ESL route through VIP Kid, a job which I just recently left. Before that, I was in graduate school working on an MFA, which, don't tell everyone, didn't exactly work out. It wasn't quite the field I really wanted to be in. But I was teaching college English composition at that level. And my background before I was in graduate school, a lot of it was in museum work, children's museums, science museums, as well as daycare. And that's kind of something I wanted to touch very briefly on. I've had a lot more success reaching further back and deeper into my background than the things that I was doing more recently.
Thanks, Ware. Yeah. Before Outschool, obviously, I still am a brick and mortar teacher. I do both. So my schedule's super jam-packed. However, I have taught in 3 states. I'm originally from New York, but I live in Florida now because I'm really good friends with Mickey Mouse. I'm super close to Mickey Mouse, and I don't like the snow. So in my travels from New York, I have also taught every grade besides first grade, K through 6. I taught in public schools, charter schools, and private schools. I led as a director. I was actually with year 2, was with a daycare / preschool, a private preschool when I lived in Atlanta. I was their director and facilitated a school of 150 children and supervised their staff and led their professional development. And I've designed curriculum as well. So my educational background is in social studies education, literacy education. I have a few different master's degrees in curriculum development and the like. So I'm kind of a jack of all trades, like every elementary teacher. I can't cook. So that's one thing. I cannot do that. Don't ask me to do that. My husband will tell you I cannot cook. I cannot vacuum. That's more by choice. And so I have 2 boys and I train them well to do all of those things for me that I don't like to do.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Wow. All right. So I also have the online ESL background like Whittier has. So I taught for VIP Kid. I started with them February, I think, of last year. So I just like surpassed my year mark, got my raise on my 3rd contract, did all of that great stuff. But I wasn't with VIP Kid very long before I realized that just wasn't going to be like a sustainable job for me. I really enjoyed working with the kids, of course. I hated not being able to teach my own curriculum. It drove me crazy to have somebody telling me exactly what I had to do. The overarching theme of VIP Kid for anybody who teaches it is kind of this edutainer type of thing. And while I can certainly be that edutainer, I work with little kids all of the time and I love it. It just was not my jam at 4 a.m. Drove me crazy. So I did that. I'm also in school. I actually had comprehensive exams today to hopefully get on the path of finishing up my doctorate in music. Got my master's in music in 2016, my bachelor's in 2014. And all the way through that, I spent a lot of time kind of cultivating a relationship with the local homeschool community and doing a lot of group classes through them. So when I found Outschool, I was definitely super excited to get to kind of dive into like working with homeschool students, especially. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's like anything else I intended to add there. I'm interested how everybody found Outschool. Like what led you to this specific platform as opposed to trying to maybe, put your own classes online or go a different way. Does anybody have a fun story for that one?
It's because of VIP Kid. In the Facebook groups for VIP Kid teachers, people were always scouting about for ways to earn additional income, and which says something about what that line of work is like if you don't want to start your workday at midnight. And Outschool would crop up, and eventually I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And applied February of 2018, had initial interview and such when the process was a little bit different. And then chickened out and was scared to death of starting anything for 6 months.
Oh my gosh. I was the same way. Like I was the exact same way. It took me so long to get my first class like under my belt because I was nervous.
Yeah, I had posted some things, and then I felt like I was a little bit. I felt like I was forced into teaching subjects that I didn't necessarily want to teach because I need to tap into my most recent experience. Hey, let's teach high schoolers how to use commas and things like that. I'm good at that. Well, just because I was good at it didn't necessarily mean I wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't enthused about creating the curriculum for it.
Gotcha. So I had seen it. I had just saw a Facebook ad. Honestly, I saw it via social media. I had never taught virtually. We had just sold our house in Georgia. We had sold it in like a matter of a week and a half, not expecting it to sell that quickly. And we moved to Florida without a place to stay. Or, you know, we had brought our kids and we're like, hey, we're staying in the hotel. We're going to Disney for a week until we find a house, until we find a place to live. Because our house sold so quickly. And so that was, for me, moving to Florida was a huge pay cut. Florida, you know, as a public school teacher, they don't pay us anything.
Yeah.
And so it was a huge pay cut. And so I looked at that as that extra venue of income, which is what it has turned into quite exponentially for our family. You know, that extra source of income to be able to make a huge transition, moving from one state to another, and give my kids and my family the lifestyle that we enjoy. So that was a big thing, but I was nervous too. Like, I was so scared because I had never taught online before. It was brand new to me.
Yeah.
So that's why I totally empathize with all these new teachers coming on, because I've been there.
Yeah, and it's so different than teaching in person. And I think, you know, Whittier and I had the VIP kid background, at least, so we had a little bit of an inkling, I think, probably coming into it. But even that is so different. The teaching style, I know, is so different, or at least I always think so when I see like VIP kid teacher videos, and I just think, ooh, that would never work for me to teach in that particular style here, just because, you know, we have native speakers on the platform and all of that stuff. And I can just imagine, with especially with my teenagers, if I ever cupped my ear like waiting for them to give me a response, I think they would just like leave the classroom.
That would be a really fun experiment
How
one
are
day.
you?
You should
Hi,
do that.
I'm fine.
I think when I first began, I kind of vaguely remember doing it, but my first student ever on Outschool, it was great. It was a single student 4-week class, so I really lucked out there. It was just one, but the most precious child, he was 6, and he just kept walking away from the computer, you know, the type. And I think at one point I definitely did some like, where did you go? You know, and I was like, oh no, what have I become? Like, VIP kid is seeped into my soul. But yeah, I guess I probably heard of Outschool. I imagine it was probably a similar like social media way, although I honestly don't remember if it was an advertisement or if it was maybe I was doing some searching. Right before I joined on with Outschool, I had been like dealing with some health issues. And so everybody who teaches for VIP Kid at least knows that when you cancel classes, your tankings just book, or your bookings rather just tank. And so that had happened to me. And then when I started to like feel better, come back into the swing of things, I was thinking like, do I really want to get up at, you know, 4 a.m. every day for the rest of the year or whatever it is until I can find something else? So Outschool, at least for me, was, there's people coming in. That's so distracting. It's just like in class. But I know Outschool, at least for me, was like such a welcomed relief, I think, and definitely helped take the load off from having to wake up so early and feeling all of those things that Whittier knows very, very well as
Yeah,
somebody who was also doing VIP Kid and in a different time zone nonetheless.
yeah. Well, when I first started VIP Kid, I was in Alaska time.
Yeah.
So I doing it like 8 and 9 p.m. and my roommate saying, "Oh no, you can't do this anymore." Or no, I had to move it to 8 and 9 p.m. because I was doing it midnight. Um, so I was doing VIP Kid and Outschool at the same time, and Outschool started slowly, and then it just started building
I think,
until
right.
got to about March.
That's what people are seeing now too, where they're jumping in and it's exponential.
They're
Yeah,
going
And
backwards.
they
yeah,
are doing the
yeah,
opposite.
yeah. So
Um,
like, I mean, I in about February or March, I was saying, okay, my VIP Kid contract ends at the end of April, and I will just shift to Outschool full time now.
mhm.
Then we got into the after.
Yeah.
And in the after, that just encouraged me to bump up my plans by a couple
Right.
months.
It's been a crazy couple months.
It's been wild.
It's been insane.
I was like sitting down and trying to kind of, you know, at the end of every month, I try to like recap on income and number of
Mhm.
classes and all of that stuff just to kind of track my own growth. And it's just comparing the last month to even last fall is just
Right.
absurd.
See, I do it on a weekly basis. So every
You're much
Sunday,
more on top of it than I am.
I have to be. I work 3 jobs. So remember,
Yeah.
like, and I homeschool my own children. So I have to be super organized. But I actually have a nice Excel sheet where I have it broken down every week. I do a Monday to Sunday week. And so every Sunday I compile my data for the week. I look at the number of learners that I had, the income that I had. I total it up at the end of every month, 4 to 5 weeks, depending on the month. I look at that across the last few years. I actually have all of my data since I started with Outschool. So I've got 3 years worth of data that is week to week I can compare. So I like to look at the trends there and see what am I going to be expecting in a typical. Obviously, we are not in a typical. So those of you that are brand new to Outschool and this is your first few months, you are not in a typical anything right now. But I like to look and see what is my typical usually, so I can kind of plan ahead and look at it when I'm building up my schedules, when I'm doing all of those things. But that's my Sunday routine. And I also look ahead. So I do projections. So I will, the first Sunday of every month, I go ahead and I fill in what is my potential. What do I currently have? My projected number of learners, my projected income. I calculate my taxes on that monthly basis, the same as I'm doing, because of course we want to make sure that we're taking care of that. That's not Outschool's responsibility. That's our job. As an independent contractor, like that's what we're supposed to do. You're not someone's employee. So it's important to make sure that you're dedicating that time to maintaining your own financial records and finding a system that works for you, because just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you guys,
Yeah, my system's a good deal more casual than that, but full confession, synesthesia issue, numbers literally do not get along for me. So I have to kind of take an approach that works for me, but I never thought of myself as being a business person at all, and the math part was a big part of it. And now it's kind of like, oh, I have to think like a business person. I have to think, how do I, phrase a tagline for a class to feel ad-like and punchy and yet concise and precise, and all of these sorts of things I never had to think of
Right.
when I was teaching college composition.
Teaching anything. I mean, that's not the teacher aspect. You really have to go into that marketing side. That might be buried really deep and you don't know it's there.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good it's a good place to transition. Someone mentioned having trouble opening the link. You might have to copy and paste it.
Yeah, Zoom's done some with the security changes. That is one thing I've noticed. If you haven't updated, so there has been an update. I don't know if you guys have it. I just updated my Zoom yesterday. And so I try to always update your Zoom, always check it. I updated it yesterday and the links are clickable again.
Okay.
So I did the update and now links are able to be clicked. So if yours is not clickable, just some point update your Zoom and it will be working again.
Yeah. Yes, always. That's a good tip and trick right there. Make sure that you update Zoom and not, 2 minutes before you're supposed to launch your class, because then
and your end meeting button has updated as well. It's now prettier. It's more rounded.
I'm glad that that's what Zoom's been working on lately, making sure that the button's pretty. Excellent.
Exactly it.
So for everybody who's joining us here, everybody who's, not been sitting in our email chat, our Facebook chat, talking about all of this stuff, when we were kind of discussing putting everything together, we thought one of the biggest things that we could talk about and something that would be probably most beneficial is kind of some of this behind the scenes stuff. In the official teaching group, I think we used to talk about this a lot more, but recently with the influx, we've definitely, I think, been answering kind of different types of questions nowadays than what we used to maybe talk about more so in there. And keep in mind, of course, that, just because it works for me doesn't mean that it works for anybody else. So all of these things, I think, are things you have to kind of figure out on your own time as well. But I thought we could just kind of give some ideas on things like scheduling or setting up your profile, how to get followers, class structure, all of that good stuff that I suspect we have some pretty different options probably between the three of us
Mhm.
here. So let's start with some scheduling stuff. We've talked about this a little bit, I know, in the veteran group at least, especially right now with how crazy things have been, and we're all under huge amounts of stress trying to get all of these classes scheduled in the way that works for us. So I guess I'll offer up what I do first, and then we can go from there. So for me, I have dedicated days and dedicated times that I teach. It's the exact same every single week. I always take Tuesdays and Saturdays off. Sundays I devote to my flexible schedule classes, and also devote to any paperwork stuff that needs to get done on the back end, catching up on emails that maybe I've been putting off for 2 days, or that type of stuff. Usually those emails are not parent emails. I try to get to those a little bit faster than that. And then from there, I literally print out a calendar and I list out all of those times, and I just fill in the slots. I've tried doing it digitally. That does not work for me. I need to be able to physically sit down and look at my calendar and see all of that stuff. And I also try really, really hard. My classes are typically 50 minutes long. My classes for my little kids, my 5 through 8 crowd, I keep those to 30 minutes, because after about 30 minutes, usually my 5-year-olds have left the room. Mom is chasing them down with the iPad. They've gone to get a snack. They're showing me everything in their house. So I just do 30 minutes for those classes. But I try to use those 30-minute classes as a place of a break, as a place to give me a little bit of time and space to maybe, catch up on something else that needs to get done, or eat a snack, or walk the dog, or whatever needs to happen. Because otherwise I would just go, for hours, sometimes 5 or 6 hours at a time, with only having 10 minutes between classes. And I have a lot of teenagers who really enjoy talking to me after class. So sometimes that 10 minutes gets cut down to 5 minutes or what have you. But yeah, so that's how I kind of do my scheduling, at least. I'm very curious to hear how everyone else does their scheduling, though. There's so many different options and so many different ways.
Go ahead, Whittier. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I mostly teach one-time classes. My longest class is 35 minutes. My shortest is 20 minutes.
Wow.
And I'm ongoing. I just started some at my first flex class. Wish me luck. But I have had limited success and limited enjoyment with doing the standard multi-week class. So I mostly do 1 weeks. 1 weeks are not fun to schedule in our interface. It can take me up to an hour to schedule 1 week of classes. So what I do on Sunday, I take an hour and schedule 1 week of classes. This coming Sunday, I will be scheduling the 3rd week of June. Now that's not counting out ongoings or flex classes. Those I schedule further out. I have tried to look at demand. That takes me twice as long to schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So I have kind of standard, okay, 9:30, 10:30, 11:30 at the bottom of the hour up to 4:30. I can tweak things a little bit, occasionally throwing those 20 minutes here and there. But demand isn't always the most useful thing for me to gauge by. I teach some classes that a parent just would not think of looking for it. So they're not going to find it till the last minute. They're not going to think, oh, my kid's birthday is coming up. Is there a class about birthdays? They usually sign up like the day before. Oh, my kid wants to have a play date. What? Play dates on Outschool? Yeah, I'm running them. They're not going to, so those classes like always fill, but I don't get lots of requests for them. There are other classes where the demand is so ridiculously great, it doesn't matter when I schedule them. They will fill like that. So I've learned, I am one person. I cannot fill everyone's demands.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm getting burnt out on classes that I don't find fulfilling in the long term, or that I feel like they're deviating too much from my mission,
Right out of there.
then I chuck them.
Yeah.
I just chuck them. That's what I say. Experiment, play around with the class a few times. If it's not meeting your passions, if you're starting to dread it, chuck it. You found what your experiment was trying to reach, and that it was that. And you might teach a class for a year and have a great time with it until it starts getting tedious. Chuck it. The kids pick up on it. The parents pick up on it. And you have so much creative control in this work that there's very little reason for you to put yourself in a position where you're not enjoying your work.
Right. See, I follow a totally different way of scheduling than both of you. I teach 6 days a week. And so I am a huge believer. I love the availability tool because I guess I teach 6 days a week, but I don't teach all day 6 days a week. So I schedule the hours that I want to work, and I put that into the availability tool that's in that teacher dashboard. And I really let that guide a lot of my scheduling, that I don't have to do it. I let those schedule requests auto book. And so it really works for me. Sundays are dedicated to I've got an awesome ongoing class that I only do for about 7 or 8 months of the year. I only do it mostly during the school year, and then we omit breaks. So it ends up being about 7 to 8 months. And that's ending in a few weeks. So I dedicate my Sunday nights to that and tutoring, because I don't believe kids should be tutoring during the weekdays. Because a lot of those are public school kids and they don't want to go home from school and tutor. So I do Sundays for that. Saturday's my family day. I don't even open my computer on a Saturday. I very rarely look at my phone on a Saturday. I try to dedicate as much of that day to my family as I can, which has been really hard lately. Because we're bored with it. We're just bored. What are we going to go do? We've been driving. And then my days typically Monday through Friday start at about 4:30 in the morning. I don't teach for VIP Kid, never have. My days start at 4:30 with a huge pot of coffee, and I catch up on my emails then. I have 2 children. So I have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. I had to remember how old he was. And I'm that mom that will forget birthdays. And so I homeschool both of them. And so I try to get a lot of my busy work and my paperwork done early in the morning. So that way I can take care of my public school teaching that I have to get done. I still have to do my Outschool classes. And I don't do a lot of one-time. I have very few one-time classes and very few flex classes. I used to have more flex classes, and I just didn't like them. I don't like there's a lot of work that goes into them. I think a lot of people have a misconception that a flex class is super easy. And I see a lot of new teachers wanting to put them on. And I was like, y'all don't realize how time intensive these are. They're crazy.
To be my Sundays.
Yes.
From now on is addressing all of the, for the next month, it's making all my recordings. And after that, it's going to be response, feedback. And I get that, but by offering one of my most popular classes in this format, that is going to be a couple 3 hours of work maybe each Sunday, where I'm not in Zoom.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be taking Fridays off.
Right. So it is
glad
nice.
to hear that.
So right? I'd rather do 3 hours without Zoom on a Sunday than 7 hours every Friday in Zoom. Because
part of what I love is I love having the relationships with the kiddos. And so I tend to, most of my classes are going to be about 5-week classes. I've got some that go up with my high schoolers to 12 weeks. But most of mine are 5 weeks because I like the relationships. I'm not a fan of the one-time class. I do them occasionally and I like them. They're a great break. I'm not like Whittier. I don't do as many of the littler kid classes. So I prefer my big kids. My 8 to 12-year-olds are my preference, and even a little older than that. But a lot of my classes are going to be shorter 5-week classes, so I get familiar with the kids. I have them over and over. There's some I've had for 2 years now, and I've been watching them grow in their learning, which has been really amazing.
Just to say, I've had kids who've taken almost exclusively one-time classes with me, who've taken 50 classes with me.
Yeah,
so,
I do too.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the relationships can happen.
No, they can. You'd have to have 50 classes with you, and I don't have 50 one-time classes.
that I'm kind of addicted to creating new classes, so that's part of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love my flex schedule classes, and I feel sometimes like I'm an oddity when I look at our, our teachers, and when we talk in the groups, especially about flexible schedule classes. But like Whittier, I find flex schedule classes to be almost therapeutic in a way, because after doing all of my live Zoom classes where I have to really try to, keep attention on me and do all of that stuff. Yeah, especially when I'm talking to my littles, I'm talking to my 5-year-olds and we're talking about Beethoven. It takes a lot of effort on my part and a lot of mental effort on my part to kind of keep them engaged that whole time. My teenagers are a completely different story. But my flex classes, I feel like I can still have all of the interaction with them as much as they want. And some of my kids interact with me daily. And some of them, they never talk to me, they never do anything in the classroom. But I feel like it gives me the ability to still teach and to still share some really amazing courses and some really fun types of topics with these students who otherwise might not enjoy flexible schedule, or otherwise might not enjoy live rather. And I get to do that in a way that isn't as like mentally stressful for me. While we're on the subject though, we should maybe clarify some of these classes, some of these titles and stuff. I wanted to make sure that we do this just because I know we have so many new teachers who probably are thinking, what are they talking about with all of this? So fortunately for us, Tegan already had this lovely little PowerPoint situation made up with this illustration here to kind of help explain things a little bit. But so flexible schedule is like my bread and butter. That's the type of class that I teach a lot of. And these are just classes that we don't do live. All of the work is within the classroom. They aren't any easier than live classes though. And I think that's a big misconception, is it kind of feels like you make a YouTube video and then you just post it and you're done. Sometimes I see that like conversation happening in some of the teaching groups, but it's not like that at all. You make the video, you make the content, and yeah, then that part's done. But then you have to be interacting with your students. You have to be responding. You have to encourage interaction between the students, which sometimes can be really challenging,
Super
especially
challenging.
yeah, especially in some of my classes. If I have like a room full of teenage boys, I might have 4 or 5 of them in there and none of them want to talk to each other in any way, shape, or form. And so I feel like you really have to be very creative perhaps in how you're getting that communication happening. I know Whittier does a lot of one-times. Do you want to kind of tell us what one-times are, how you structure those maybe, or what you do for those?
All right. I have maybe an unorthodox approach to it. Half an hour. What does that sound like to me? It sounds like a TV show. And I build lessons kind of the way a TV writer would build the script for a half-hour sitcom. I'm thinking, okay, I want to make a class about animals. What can I realistically teach in that amount of time? I can teach 6 animals in half an hour. If you take a bunch of my animal classes, it's always 6 animals. Because by now I've established the sense of the beats and the rhythms of the class, how much information I want to put out there. I do very introductory level stuff because of the age range that I work with. But yeah, I also think in terms of series. Like I have Around the World is one of my preschool social studies groups. So I have Around the World neighborhoods, Around the World houses and homes, clothing, food, birthdays. And here's the thing with a concept like that, I can keep building it. I'm wanting to do one on transportation once settled down a bit, and so on. I can combine those into ongoing classes. I can combine them into multi-meeting, as it's listed here, multi-meeting, multi-week classes. Those haven't gone so well. Parents of preschoolers are afraid to sign up for multi-meeting because they're like, oh, well, my kid might melt down and then I'm out $50.
Right.
Yeah.
You can teach exactly the same content in an ongoing and they're only charged by the week and they're not scared.
Mm-hmm. That's a great
Um,
point too, because I mean, when you're just starting out, a multi-week is probably not the way to go. But
No.
you want to have that introductory low cost, and that's going to be the one-time class
or the ongoing,
Or
or the
ongoing.
because
ongoing,
you're charged per the week.
right? And then that just brings sometimes our new families have a little confusion with that. They're like, hey, we didn't realize that that's what that meant. And so that there is sometimes a little confusion to make sure people, especially if you see a new to Outschool family come up in your roster for an ongoing class, just kind of reaching out and keeping that communication line open with them is super helpful to make
Yeah.
sure that everybody knows. And we all have our own learning curves, and that's a huge one. The different styles of classes that we have here in Outschool, just like teachers, they get used to the difference between a section and a class. We have a learning curve as teachers, and the parents have a learning curve too. So they might not realize it. Being very flexible is super important, especially right now. I mean, being flexible all the time is important. However, right now, especially being really flexible, somebody misses a class, or they don't realize the type of class that they signed up for.
Yeah.
While we get that it's your income, and we get that, I think at the same time we do want to be flexible with that, because we've all got stuff going on, and we have to just kind of bear that in mind.
Yeah, I think it pays in the long run to be
Mm-hmm.
flexible. I had a student just enroll in a flexible schedule class with me, completely new to Outschool family, and they got in on the first day. I posted my introductory materials and did all of that, song and dance that we do on the first day. Welcome to the classroom. I'm so excited to work with you. And his mom sent a message, and it just said something along the lines of, I'm so sorry, this class is nothing like what we were looking for. We were looking for you to be doing this in the class, and I'm doing this in the class. And it hurt, to be like, that's fine, I'm going to refund you completely, I'm going to withdraw. Obviously that hurt because it's my income. But at the end of the day, that was their first experience on Outschool. And if I told them, no, you're only getting 75% back because we're the first day of class, and you're going to have to pay for that first week in the prorated flexible schedule refund scheme, that would have really stung for them, I imagine. And it was also, I think, another thing to think of when you have those kind of concerns coming back, when parents maybe aren't quite understanding what a class is to go back to your listing and look at it and think about why they're thinking that. Because I know in my case, at least, I went to the veteran group and posted the class and asked for some advice. And everybody came back saying it's the title. The title isn't super clear. And, it's really easy to see how parents could be misunderstanding what your class is, what the intent is, based just on the title when they're scrolling through hundreds and hundreds of classes on Outschool. So that's also
They
something
might
to
not
definitely
read the
consider.
description. They might not read the whole description, and that title is key. The title's key.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
So,
It's like title first and then that little tiny blurb up there. And then after that, you can go into it in the description. But if your title's confusing, parents are going to get confused because that's just what happens. We're all busy. We all have stuff going on. Sometimes it's hard to read all of these things.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and I prefer, like you guys get flexible, and one time I prefer multi-meeting. That is my favorite. I like Whittier. I do kind of groupings or series of classes. And what that enables me to do is they are priced fairly low. I don't go crazy with the pricing. I think that's something that we want to also just kind of keep in mind, your pricing idea. Having a larger number of learners at a lower price, if you're looking at that financial aspect of it, is going to equate to a higher rating there for you. Like, it's going to equate to higher pay. So do keep that in mind. The higher the price, you're just going to scare people away. As a parent myself, I will tell you, I watch prices. Absolutely. That's what I do. And so look at the cost of your class and think, if I were a parent and I had 2 children or 3 children, what have you, and what's going on in your life financially, could you afford your class, or is it a luxury item? Because if it's a luxury item, it's probably going to get passed by.
And to put the business spin on this too, if you're pricing a class at $20 and at that price point you're attracting 2 students, that's a maximum of 2 kids you can get for repeat business.
Mm-hmm.
If you're pricing that same class at 10 or 12, and that's drawing 8 kids,
Yeah.
Those are
It's
8
a huge
kids
difference.
who have the potential of coming back for more of your classes.
Yeah.
So it's
Also,
about
if
playing the long game as well.
And also, if you're new, those are 8 kids who can now leave you 5-star reviews. That's another thing we should probably talk about here. Is the review thing on Outschool, because I think it's so important, and I think it's a huge source of stress. I know when I was first starting to teach, it was so stressful, like just waiting for those reviews and just hoping. And back in the day, you had to have so many reviews before you could list more than however many classes. I don't remember what it was.
5.
5 classes maybe. And I know for me, when I first joined the platform, that was so stressful, because I was thinking, I've got 1 kid in a 4-week class, and I'm getting a few kids here and there for my one-time classes, but they're not leaving reviews. And I feel like I've personally noticed a huge kind of, what's a good way to phrase this? I've noticed a lot of people who are very upset about the types of reviews that they're getting on Outschool. So I'm really interested, I guess, to hear, how everybody else feels about those types of reviews, and also how you try to use those reviews maybe to better your product, because I think that's a big, huge component of it that can be hard to do in the beginning, because your feelings do just get a little bit hurt when someone says something you don't want to hear.
I know personally, I try not to think about the reviews, to be really honest. I really, truly don't. I have gotten a 2 before, absolutely. And it was, I deserved it. And it was a horrible situation. My grandfather had died, and I had to cancel class. I was traveling across the country to a funeral. And I canceled class, and it was a rough time for me, and I got a 2. Oh, well, I put on my big girl pants and I dealt with it, because that's what you have to do sometimes. It didn't kill me. You can go on and look at my ratings. They're not going to kill you. They're not going to hurt you. There's not going to be negative implications for having a bad review. And honestly, at the beginning, it's a learning situation. It's take it and learn from it. We want to have that growth mindset. We tell kids to have the growth mindset. We need to do the same thing. If you're seeing that, like Caitlin said, reflect on it. Why am I getting this review? Whether or not you feel it's justified is irrelevant. That's completely irrelevant, because your perception is your reality. And if the perception of that family was it was a 2, then you want to just look into that mindset. Well, what is it that they felt or that they saw that would cause that? And how can I, again, going back to that business mindset, how can I kind of take that and turn it into a positive?
Yeah, my mind's kind of going a couple of different directions. For anyone who's coming from a VIP kid background, 4 apples, their version of the
Bad
star.
news.
4 apples, kiss of death
Yeah.
in VIP kid. And that was kind of hard for me to transition to in Outschool, to see, for some families, a 4 is a 5. Some have the attitude, well, there's always room for improvement. There are the ones who will give you 4 stars and say there's room for improvement and give you the advice of how to improve.
Open mindset.
To the best of my recollection, I have never gotten a 2 that didn't come with incredibly valuable feedback that I could turn around and improve the classes. And then I didn't run into the issues again that they said I had when they gave me that 2.
Yeah, it stings. It stings, right? And we all know that it stings, and it stings for everybody. You're definitely, if you've gotten a poor review and that's something that really kind of threw you off, you're definitely not alone, because we've all had those poor reviews. I think it's also important to consider, if you get 5 reviews from your class and 4 of them are 3 stars and they all have very similar comments, consider that maybe the parents weren't just completely wrong. Right? If you're getting a large amount of people who are saying the same things to you, it probably means that something you're doing isn't just quite working the way that you want it to work, and that you might need to kind of adjust it a little bit. And that's a huge learning curve. Teaching online, it doesn't matter how long you've been teaching in a public school classroom, or at least in my opinion, and I'm sure Tegan can agree because she's a public 100%. School teacher. It's completely different. And especially when you're interacting with small children, I think the learning curve for me, jumping from, hanging out with 4-year-olds in person and teaching them recorder, and hanging out with 4-year-olds on the computer and talking to them about Beethoven, was massive. Even after VIP Kid experience where I, had worked with kids that age before. Yeah, reviews. Whew, they sting. They sting sometimes. We have one last kind of class style here that I'm going to just kind of briefly glance over, just because I think this is the one that's probably most confusing to our new to Outschool families, and also sometimes to new to Outschool teachers. I would like to point out, though, that there is an amazing article in the Support Center coming at it from a parent perspective that I love to send to my new to Outschool families who join my ongoing classes. And I also send it pretty much to anyone who comes to me confused about what's going on with class. It just is really helpful and explains everything really well. But ongoing, I love ongoing just as much probably as I love flex schedule. I love that sometimes I can have an entire classroom of new students. I think it's really exciting for me to get to have that. I personally do my ongoing as learner based as far as what our topics kind of shift to. And I found that that really works well for me. I know some teachers kind of have a set, on week 1, they'll cover this, and week 2, they'll cover that, and that type of style as well. Just if you're someone who's considering teaching an ongoing class, keep in mind that families can drop in and out throughout the week. You don't necessarily know who's going to be in your class until it begins that day. And that the topics need to be able to be independent of each other. So if you're someone who has a lot of one-time classes that all relate, though, those can turn into a wonderful ongoing class, or at least I think so. Do you all agree with that? Do you do ongoing?
Absolutely. I do. And can I jump off of, Caitlin, you bring up such a great point with the support center. There are so many fantastic documents in there, and you would not go on a vacation without planning and doing your research. If I buy a new electronic device or whatever I'm buying in my home, I'm going to do the research before I do that. Please, please, please go on to the support center and look at some of these things that are on there, because I promise you it will answer 90% of your questions without a doubt. Some of the
Outschool.com.
it's amazing. There's so
memorize it.
much on there. So please, please, please take some time. Like honestly, don't sit and read it all in one sitting, but it has so many great resources on there, whether you're reading the teacher guide or the parent guide, to get the perspective from both sides.
Yeah. And I think it's important as a teacher to look at that parent guide and see what they're being told as well. I think it's really helpful to understand what the parents are getting on their side and what kind of expectations they might have due to those support articles. I think it also kind of helps clarify maybe what Outschool is hoping for and kind of what the platform is leading itself to, I suppose would be one way to phrase that. And as far as support goes and trying to find things, I've also had a lot of success just Googling Outschool support and then whatever topic I want. And it almost always brings up the article immediately. And I don't even have to go into like the Outschool support platform and search that way. So if you have like a specific topic, I think that's a really kind of excellent way to get there. I can't believe it's already like 8:48. It's like time always flies in these things. Yeah. So what does everyone wish that they knew when they started on the platform? There's so many things.
I was not beholden to teach high school English just because I just taught college English. And I didn't necessarily enjoy teaching college English. And I even just a few months ago, I had a class on Harlem Renaissance poetry that it's a subject I like. I like to teach. I have a background in poetry. I just have never attracted that subject, that age range, just like not at all. Even though that's what I started out doing. My first class was on one of my first classes, Introduction to Satire. Ages 14 to 18, a 12-year-old signs up. Okay, I've got a little genius here. Nope. And just dropped out after the first week. And it's just like, oh. But then I was just kind of like, what? They're not just looking at what letters are hanging off the end of my name.
Right.
They're considering what are my experiences, what am I passionate about. I've always been kind of autodidactic, and that's kind of where my dinosaur classes came from. First of all, why the heck aren't these teachers teaching dinosaur classes. It's an obvious sell. But also I'm like, hold on, I spend an unusual amount of time reading about dinosaurs. And hey, I used to teach about marine fossils in a museum, which they're not technically dinosaurs, but they're fossils. And I know how to talk about fossils to kids. And
Mm-hmm.
thinking, what am I passionate about? What am I experienced about? What's my expertise?
Right.
Right.
'Cause, yeah.
I've made a couple of errors where my expertise wasn't strong enough in an area. I don't teach those
Right.
anymore. Lesson learned.
Right. I think that's what originally I'm brick and mortar. I have got extensive education in that, and I can put those letters behind my name. I can put those titles behind what I've done. But at the end of the day, that's not really what matters to the families. What's mattering to these families is not, and I think for our public school teachers, it really is a paradigm shift, because what's mattering to the families is not those letters that are behind your name. It's not any accolades that you've gotten professionally. It really, truly isn't. It is, how are you treating their child? How are you instilling a love of learning in their child? It's not, is my child meeting a standard? And that's a paradigm shift. That's a huge paradigm shift for public school teachers that are coming online, because that's not the purpose. The purpose of learning is to gain knowledge, and the purpose of learning is to desire and to continue to seek out being a lifelong learner. And that's what our families on Outschool are seeking.
Yeah.
They are not, they're worried. They want their children to learn. Absolutely. I don't want to deny that, but they're not seeking for that standardized learning experience. They want something different for their child, which is why we have predominantly homeschooled families during more normal times. And so that's I think what I wish I had known then. I think that was my learning curve for that first probably year. It took me that long to have that paradigm shift. Don't expect to have it overnight. It's a huge mindset change, and it takes time to become accustomed to that type of clientele, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing that's really challenging when you first start on the platform is just the level of autonomy that you have. It's so, so, so different. Even when I was working with homeschool families one-on-one in person, they would come to me with what they wanted me to teach, and then I would create the curriculum that went around it. And I know when I first came to Outschool, just that first class, I think, was so incredibly overwhelming, because it's like you could teach anything within this huge, huge scope. I'm a musician, but I could teach any component of music, and I could teach that to any kid, any age, any kind of group setting, and all of that. And I think that was terrifying, and I think it was really overwhelming at first. And I know when I kind of went into the teaching group and we kind of search through things, there's a great search function on Facebook. If you're not familiar with it, definitely check it out. You can find lots and lots of stuff in that teaching group from years and years gone by. But one of the things that I kept seeing over and over again was the recommendation to teach anything that you would teach for free any day of the week, no matter who came into your classroom. And that set it off. And my first class was on sound effects, because I love sound effects. And then I turned that into a multi-week on film. And so I think having the level of autonomy that you do as a teacher on Outschool is not something that most of us are used to, especially if you're coming from a brick and mortar background. It's very, very different. But remember that you're not an employee of Outschool. You are an independent contractor, and you need to kind of shift your mindset in that way. You get to make the decision on policies in your classroom. Outschool, of course, has guidelines to kind of help you out there. They don't want you kicking somebody out because they had a dog run in the background or something.
It's like Airbnb for teachers. Airbnb is going to have standards for the houses that they put out. However, you are still the homeowner. You are deciding what you have and all of those kind of components to it. Airbnb for teachers.
I always call it the Etsy of education. It's just
I like that
market.
One too.
It's just a marketplace. They're just helping you put your classes out there, but they're not telling you exactly what you need to make your products out of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Let's see. Let's do some
Go
Q&A.
ahead. Yes. So there's a few things in the chat. I know I like that Etsy for educators too. So there's a couple of questions about the Zoom in the chat. And it was because I had mentioned my Zoom is updated. So my Zoom has clickable links again. That's super I was so excited. So typically I check my Zoom. Lately, I've been checking my Zoom for updates at least once a week, only because with recent events of naughty children on TikTok and that other thing I can't remember because I don't have, I have a 13-year-old boy. He's not interested in any of that stuff. The kids like sharing it and all that jazz. So I do check my Zoom about once a week for an update. Now, typically I was like every 2 weeks. Just like I would check my iPhone. You know, I check my phone for an update. I check Zoom for an update. Do you guys do anything different?
About the same, I
I-
think. And I make sure to push the
yeah.
notification. I make sure to push the update if I see anybody
Mhm.
say anything about it online.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not quite so disciplined.
I'm a
Sometimes I
little
just do
OCD
it.
here.
Oh, I had a strange problem in class. Maybe it's a Zoom issue. But
On
that
my
is a good point. That
schedule.
that Zoom is having to kind of reinvent itself. It has exploded, just like Outschool has exploded, and then they've had to
Mhm.
redesign a lot of things. So this is
Just
kind of like, okay,
bottom line is
thank you
check
for
your
telling me
Zoom.
I should be checking in on this
Yes, check it
more
frequently.
often. And that can be, yeah, and so that can be a little bit counterintuitive too. I mean, it certainly
Mhm.
is for parents who are like, well, I opened Zoom and I can't get into the
Right.
classroom. What's the code? Well, it's because we have this
Right.
special setup through the Outschool website, but you still have to do
Yes,
the
your
updates on the
Zoom.
software
Yes, the
in the
Zoom that you have
computer.
downloaded, you don't have to have your own Zoom account, but the Zoom that you've downloaded is essentially what the Outschool account connects to. Like they partner with one another to get you that connection. So, and if you notice that, like I noticed that I had that update, so I just shot out a quick, blast out to my families because I use Nearpod, and so I want them to be able to click in the chat because it's just so much easier when we use Nearpod for them to click versus copy and paste. And so I sent out a quick blast, hey, download the newest Zoom update because you can click again. We've been dealing with that for a couple of weeks. So, we were all super stoked to have that. There's a couple other questions that are coming in on the Google Doc, though, that I wanted to pass on. There's a few questions about summer. So I think we should probably just, due to the time frame and how close we are to summer, as crazy as it sounds, summer, what are you guys planning? There's a couple. So what adjustments do you make to your course loads, your offerings, your times, et cetera, for the summer versus the school year? What have you tried in the past, your takeaways, and what are you planning for this summer? But then someone also wanted to know, just to kind of guide what you guys have for your answers, the benefits of offering a summer camp session versus a multi-day course.
Um, th-
That was a big
this
one.
year's this year, all things are different. Everything's out the window. We're having to reinvent things as we go along.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Historically, my clubs, my not my clubs, but my summer camps didn't do very well. So I was like, okay, forget it. I'll just turn my dinosaur club into a dinosaur camp. Well, I think you can imagine this year especially. Yeah, good luck trying to get into one of those. They
Right.
booked all like that. Um, I I'm having to think, okay, my little playtime series, a kind of like lightly guided play date type of stuff. I think that's going to, I'm trying to think, what are kids going to normally do in summer that they can't do now that they're
Mhm.
going to adapt? What
Right.
can I adapt?
And there was a
I,
poll in the classes group too. I think they did a parent poll, and the preference for parents was one-time classes.
yeah.
That's what I saw when I looked at those
Mhm.
results.
Yeah,
So keep
and
those,
I
pay
have a
attention to that.
I have a lot of one-time classes about different countries under the Let's Go
Mhm.
name. Let's go to Japan. Let's go to Trinidad. Let's go to Peru. And I figure kids are going to miss out on travel this summer, and parents are going to be like, well, normally we'd be going to XYZ. And so I've even invented like an even younger version, sort of like younger version of that, where it's just kind of like, okay, um,
I'm going to take that,
let
Whittier, and I'm
pick,
going to
pick.
make a let's go on a Disney cruise because that's what I needed to be doing this summer. Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm even doing this thing called Where Should We Go Today, where it's like, okay, kids, let's vote. Do you want to go? Do you want to go to the city with a big bean or the city with the tallest building in the world? And I'll just drop them in the map of Chicago or Abu Dhabi, whichever they choose. Hey,
Mhm.
let's look around. What do you notice? What direction should we go to? What do you want to explore?
Mhm.
20 minutes,
Right.
$4. That
Um,
that's going to work this summer, I think.
that I think that's going to be a huge one this summer. It's just people need flexibility right now, and I'm not sure that the summer camp format's going to meet those. Some people do really well with summer camps, though. It depends. It's a hit or miss. There's no like anything with Outschool or anything in business at all. There is no clear defined plan. There is no clear defined, right and wrong. It's going to work for some. It's not going to work for others, and so I don't know, but I am paying attention. And so any teachers that are not in the online classes with Outschool group, that parent group, I would recommend it, even if like I don't usually post in there and I don't usually comment too much, but I keep an eye out because that's my business, that's my clientele. So I need to keep an eye out on what it is that they're wanting. And so that is a great piece of advice, just to go on there and kind of hang out and just be a pair of ears and listen. Um, some other things, we talked about scheduling already. And there's some good questions about, oh, there's some long ones, guys. Okay. So it's current versus the norm. I think we're getting quite a few questions about current versus the norm. In terms of enrollments, your numbers with enrollments, how are you seeing things? I mean, drastically larger. We can ignore that fact because that's a given.
Yeah.
But I think how full are your classes typically versus now, and just I think people are wondering what to expect when this all settles down and the dust settles. What is it that they can expect?
I think with mine, and I think one other thing to consider when you're looking at this is the topics that you teach. I teach music, so that's different than if I were teaching history, math, science, that type of stuff. The need is different. It's very, very different. But typically before, I think we could call it here, my classes would fill, I would say on average, I'd have 50% enrollment in my classes. That would be a pretty standard week for me. My younger kid classes have always filled better than my teenage classes. My younger kid classes hardly ever cancel because of no enrollment, and haven't for quite some time. Obviously, when you're brand new to the platform, that happens all of the time. Your classes cancel. But yeah, I would say on average before I was getting 50% enrollment of the slots that I had opened. Before all of this went down, I had slightly higher flexible schedule enrollments than I did live enrollments. I assume because kids have busy lives, they're out doing things. And most of my flex classes are teenagers, largely things like film music or EDM. So classes where teens would probably be in a public school and they're taking it as kind of an elective extra thing for them. But I would say 50% enrollments typically would have been what I got.
I would agree with that. Again, I do same age demographics, basically my 8 to 13-year-olds, but I do more academic classes. I am more predominantly writing. We do history, and that's my core, are those core classes. And so I see about 50% enrollment as well, which is ideal, to be really honest.
Yeah.
It's unless you are one of those really tight niche teachers, like Whittier is a niche teacher, like he controls the preschool domain. You look at Lindsay Nelson, she controls that STEM domain. We have some teachers that are exceptional teachers in their niche, and that's wonderful. But the majority of us, we get about 50%, I would say, and that's perfectly fine. Don't expect, again, coming from a brick and mortar school, I do have 25 students in a classroom, and that's not the norm. And even if I have online 10 students, that's a lot. When I have a class of 10 students, I'm like, oh my gosh, because that's a lot of work. I opened it up because of all the recent events, and I actually had a really large writing class because I was like, I knew I needed to meet the need of public school students, which I had. It was all public school students. And I knew I needed to meet that need because mine is such a core class, and I had a ton. I had way full sections. And they're finally ending this week, and I have 5,000 papers of feedback to do. And so I had to open that up, but typically I don't have that many. And I like it that way. I base my classes, my ideal enrollment for all classes is 3 kids. That's my minimum. And I gear it towards that 3 learner minimum, because that's a great small group. And again, take off that teacher hat for a moment, take off that business person hat for a moment, and put on the parent hat. And how awesome and incredible is it for your child to be in a class with 3 kids and to get that personalized attention. I would love that. Like, as a parent, I love that, because I know, of course, every parent thinks that their kid's like so sweet and so special, and mine are annoying. I love them dearly, but they're annoying. But they still deserve that small group. Absolutely. So we try to think of it that way. And in the summertime, I don't know about you guys, summertime is more laid back for me. So I am out. I live in Florida, so we're usually at the pool or at the beach, or we're at Disney or Universal. Like, we go and we do things. We're a really busy family. So I will run less classes in the summer. I plan for that during my school year. I run a whole lot less classes, and I throw one on, and if it doesn't hit it gets 2 learners, I run it. Absolutely. I don't always run lower than my minimum of 3. I typically don't, but in the summertime and rare occasions when it's a repeat learner, I totally do.
So for me, last August, September was when I was like, okay, hour-long upper elementary classes are killing me, exhausting me. This isn't my bag. So I'm going to double down on the preschool classes. So
Mm-hmm.
I practically reinvented my business model starting last August, September. So which meant it was even though I had always been teaching some of those classes, but it was kind of, okay, I'm building up a new niche. Offering typically 8 classes a day, 5 days a week. All right. So in January, and historically January sees an uptick in enrollments because you get homeschooling parents. Oh, this September, we're starting homeschooling for the first time, and we are so excited. And they get to January, it's like, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. I need help. So we typically get this uptick in January. My uptick in January, I was starting to, out of those like 40 some classes, I was starting to get typically, it was gradually building up. Every week was setting a new record. Oh, I got 100 enrollments this week. Oh, I got 110, 120. Then it hit. And over a single weekend, every single class, every single slot for the next 3 weeks filled. Bam, 220 kids.
See, I take every March off. I don't typically work in March. It's my birthday month, and I take the whole month. No, my family, I live in Florida, and so
don't offer much in July. I get it.
We live in Florida, so we have family that comes for spring training, which obviously didn't happen this year. So I usually take the whole month off because we end up having family come and visit, and it's just a busy month. So I didn't even join into the coronavirus stuff until the end. So all of my classes started April 1st and March 30th, I think. So I missed that whole first month because that was fine by me. I went on I was the last cruise out of the country and just kind of hung out and did whatever. But it's a different world right now. It really is. It's an Outschool. It's a different world. We have a few other questions though that I wanted to make sure we get in, because I know we're over our time. So I want to make sure we get those in. I'm trying to go through here. So we've got best ideas for finishing if you get done early. I mean, which is going to depend on the age. Going to depend. I think it's always just important to have something in your back pocket though. Like something. Just like you would in a traditional classroom, have something there that's, if you're doing an ELA generated class, I always have something I can just pull up real quick, a boggle or whatever. If I'm doing a math or music, having something to get them going. Have something in your back pocket.
I just keep I keep an eagle eye on the clock as it's going on. And I'm constantly thinking about my pace. Okay, do we have time to dive into this one point a little deeper at like the 10-minute mark? Right. So that I'm not getting into a position where, oh, we've got 10 minutes left and I don't have anything to say. Because I'm just and again, it goes back to my thinking about scripting and beats and pace. Mind you, some of that just comes from experience, right? And me discovering, oh, this class that I've been marketing as 25 minutes, this is a half-hour class. Guess what? I need to bump this up in its listing to a half-hour class. And and meet those expectations.
So another question, this is a really good one. Talking about branding Outschool classes outside of Outschool and aside from having a strong product and reputation and patience, what do you guys think helps you stand out in this vastly growing crowd?
I think finding your niche and sticking with it, at least in the beginning, is probably the most important thing you can do for marketing yourself. I know when I joined Outschool, I'm not the only music teacher on Outschool by a long shot, and I wasn't when I joined either, but I immediately did not go anywhere near private lessons. I did not want to teach. I'm a flutist. I didn't want to teach flute. I didn't want to teach piano. I didn't want to teach singing. And I immediately jumped into niche topics in music. So I did film music right away. And I do an animals and music class for my little kids. I do coloring with composers. So I think taking whatever your area of expertise is and finding whatever it is that makes you tick in that area and developing those classes so you can have your like niche market. Because once you get your kids in there, once you get the families in the seats and they're seeing how much you're loving talking about film music, then they're going to want to take another class with you. And I have a lot of kids who I retain and end up, bopping over into another class that might be completely different topic material. But I think niche marketing is where to go, especially right now with all of the teachers that are on the platform.
Right. I do the same with my history classes. We do history through film. So I'm teaching history, but we're watching movies and we're talking about movies. And it was great. I had a class last night and I literally was able to sit here in my seat just hanging out because these kids are just going crazy and having this fantastic discussion that I didn't even need to facilitate anything. And so and I've had them in classes before. So that was really the great part, is that they're able to, at this point, they're in the third class of the series. And I've been with them since August. And so they're just going to town, doing their thing. They know the drill. We have a set routine. We know what we're doing. And I can just kind of sit back and relax and enjoy the show of these fantastic discussions as they are ripping apart imperialism in Africa, and how Tarzan is just such a horrible whole idea of that, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Two things. First of all, I looked for where the holes were in the curriculum at Outschool, and then considered whether I could be the one to fill it. If I couldn't fill it, then I wasn't going to touch it.
Yeah.
I saw, where are the dinosaur? Well, I have our dinosaur classes. Right now, I'm the only person offering a comprehensive preschool social studies curriculum. I've said this before, and someone will pop up, well, I've got like 2 classes. I'm like, I've got 35, and they're all and they're mostly all interrelated, right? So I looked for what was missing and considered how to fill it. The other thing, I have a mission statement or vision, I suppose you could say. Creativity, curiosity, compassion. And I center everything around my mission for why I am teaching. And if it doesn't fit that mission, I don't do it. You need to, if you can figure out your own mission and center everything on what you do and what you believe and what's in your heart, that I think will help you stand out. Because that's a world of difference just from just slapping up classes.
Yeah.
That is you giving your heart.
Right. I think there's a huge difference, slapping up classes. Like you mentioned, it's what people do. They get the idea. Just because you get the idea doesn't mean we have to follow through on it. There's a lot of different options. There's so many different ways to market yourself as well. Some of the things, and just kind of going back to, I want to make sure that we answer the question. If we have not answered, if that was your question and we have not answered it fully, please drop us a line in the chat so that we can make sure that we're doing that. Yeah. But you have to, I think, the biggest thing to set yourself apart, get those one-time classes, get those parents hooked, get those families hooked, bread and butter them, like really and truly, because that's their babies. We got to make sure that we're catering to them, and I don't mean catering to them in an enabling kind of way, but catering to them by showing them that you care, reaching out to them, making sure that you're making those connections, because that's what's going to set you apart. That's what's going to help you to stay. I mean, I've been here for 3 years and I still have students that I've had for 3 years. And how I'm able to do that is because I literally establish relationships with these families. I talk to them. You know, I had a student email me from a year and a half ago. He's like, hey, I have this assignment. I don't know how to do it. Can you help me? I'm like, of course, hop on Zoom with me. Let's go. And I'm not getting paid for that. But you know what? I'm going to have that child again in another class someday because mom knows that I'm there. She knows that I care, and I'm not just doing it for the $50 class. And marketing yourself that's what you're doing. Every interaction that you have is marketing. Everything everything that you do.
Yeah. And another thing kind of going off of that is to remember, if you are posting in some of those public places on social media, that is also marketing, because a lot of parents are also Outschool teachers. So if you're in the official teacher group, you might think that you're in a break room, so to speak, and you kind of are, but you're also dealing with some potential clientele in there, just inevitably. And you're also dealing with potential clientele who's going to talk to all of their homeschooling friends. And I know I've had several interactions with other teachers, especially online, where I think, oh, if I was a parent, I would never sign up for that class.
And I recommend other teachers. If I am knowing that there's a teacher that's like griping and grinding, I'm not going to recommend them. Yeah. I mean, I send out every, you know, I told you guys earlier, I'm like super OCD with my record keeping. I have every learner. Until this COVID hit, I literally had every learner itemized in a spreadsheet, just so I could remember back, because I do have so many. And I personally send them like, oh my gosh, this is what you did. This is what I saw from you today. This teacher would be perfect for your child. And I send them to certain classes. I'm not going to send them as a marketing. I mean, yes, I am another contractor just like you guys, but I'm not going to send them to a teacher that I don't feel is going to be true to the idea that I believe an educator needs to be true to. I guess if that's the best way to put that.
It makes you look bad as a teacher to send your clients to somebody who's not going to deliver the same quality of service that you're delivering.
So we had one last question, and there's two, but I'm going to combine them into one again. And it's because it's just more about, I feel as though they're really connected, because one is just about private tutoring and prices. And that's, I think it's you have to set that yourself. Do either of you guys do any private tutoring?
No.
Okay, I do. I do private tutoring. I do ongoing. I do one time and all that. If you're doing ongoing classes, I don't know if we mentioned earlier, our charter school families cannot enroll in an ongoing course. Yeah. So if you do an ongoing course, you probably should also offer that as a one-time or a multi-session, because charter school families cannot. And our influx in August, September, and January, a lot of that's charter. A lot of it's charter. So you might want to just kind of take that into consideration. But the other big question is, does Outschool tend to cater more to a certain age group? I teach middle school math, and I'm finding that I am getting mostly 9 to 12. I am thinking of offering a class for grades 7 and 8, which is 13 to 14-year-olds, but I am concerned that I won't get many students to sign up. Thank you. I will give you my 13-year-old, because I did math for 3 hours today, and I'm done. You can have mine.
There is a narrative of high schoolers taking community college classes, of doing advanced, doing all sorts of things that would veer them away from Outschool. That's in the before. We have no idea what school is going to look like this fall, and don't let anyone convince you otherwise.
No. And I think with that, the Whittier, so if I'm looking at a class, and I do have a child that age, algebra is a really long subject. I know that's a full year that he needs. I'm not going to enroll him in a 16-week class. I can't afford it. I know what that is going to cost. If you're wanting to do those older kid subjects, I feel like you need to really break it down into smaller sections, because I can't afford it. That's a price point issue. Yeah. And so that might help that enrollment with those older kiddos.
Yeah. Going off of that, I actually have a fairly large number. I'm split pretty much evenly between 5 to 8 and my teenagers, 13 to 18. So I think, again, you need to look at what you're teaching, because I think with a lot of my 13 to 18-year-olds, I teach a musical class, an ongoing musical class. It is filled every single week. I have 4 sections of that class running right now. It fills out at 12 kids. So that's 48 kids every week that are hanging out with me talking about Broadway musicals. Now, the reason that class fills, or at least I believe on Outschool, is because it's not necessarily an academic subject, and because I offer some of those sections at a time when public school kids can attend. I would say my attendance is probably 50-50 split between public school and homeschooling families, and it was the same way before all of this happened. So I do get a good number of teenagers who want to get kind of a like baby college class. I teach a music history class that's 9 weeks long. And those are typically kids who want to go into music, and their parents are trying to encourage and motivate them and empower them and all of that good stuff that we try to do for our students. So if you're somebody who teaches a subject like that, if you teach art or music or something, definitely consider looking at those older age brackets as a way for them to kind of get a baby college experience where they get to really focus in on one subject. But if you're teaching academics, it's definitely a different ballgame.
And you're right. And you throw in the academic aspect, there's a lot of families that are anti-Common Core. And so that's going to be a big concern, that they're going to want that. They're going to go maybe to a more religious curriculum that they're going to do outside of Outschool, because obviously we don't do that. And they might just not want the Common Core aspect of it. So, and that's fine. That's fine. So if you're going to offer something like that, you want to offer and highlight this is not Common Core, or you want to offer Common Core and you want to have 2 separate classes, one that is and one that is not. It's up to you. I do teach a few math classes. Mine are aligned to Common Core, mainly because that's already what I'm teaching and that's what's in my head, and it makes sense to me. I have researched it, so I understand the educational background behind the Common Core and what that does, so it doesn't bother me. But at the same time, I have empathy and I understand those that don't. And so when I have a family that reaches out to me and say they don't, I make tweaks. Okay, you don't follow this particular standard of instruction. That's cool. I can tweak it so that I can meet those needs. So being open to that and recognizing that there are, our homeschooling families especially, they don't want that Common Core aspect of it. Because again, that goes into are we teaching to a standardized learning, or are we teaching to love to learn?
Yeah.
So.
Are those all of our questions?
Those were all of our questions.
All right. Does anybody have any final wrap-up thoughts before, anything that you've been dying to say this whole time that you haven't gotten out yet?
I will say that Buddy is screaming at me to cover his cage because it's about 20 minutes past his bedtime. So I'm probably gonna do it like this.
That's wonderful.
Right. Well, thank you guys for coming. It was a fun little time here. And reach out, like really and truly, especially those of you that are newer to Outschool, whether you're new in the last month, you're new in the last 6 months. Please, please, please. I think everybody and Caitlin and Whittier would kind of agree. We're not here to make things harder for you. That's why we've done this tonight. We really do want you to succeed. We all truly, and again, I don't mean to speak for everybody, but we truly believe in Outschool. We believe in the mission behind Outschool and what it is that they're doing. And we want the company to be successful, and we want us to be successful. We want you to be successful. So please reach out if you do have questions, 100%. Make sure you're checking out the support center. Can't say that enough. But thank you guys, really for coming, and best of luck.
Yeah.
Be patient and withstand the storm.
Yeah. Hopefully before too long, things will be a little bit back to normal, at least for everyone, for all of us, and for everyone else as well. I will do my very best. Hopefully it says it's been recording. So in the event that it has in fact recorded, I'll upload it to YouTube, and I'll post that into the teaching group for anybody who maybe wasn't able to be here for the entire duration, who might want to go back and check something out. But otherwise, I think I'll go ahead and stop our meeting. Thank you all so much for coming again. And thank you, Tegan and Whittier, for hanging out and talking with all of us as well. It was super cool to get to do all of this. So
nice little hangout.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone. Hope we get to see you guys again soon.
Bye, everybody.